Welcome to this week's KBJ Weekly Pan-African News Roundup. Here we serve you with all the major news headlines from across Africa and the African diaspora. In the headlines, Buhari presents his final budget as president. Burkina Faso reacts to Traore's appointment as head of state. And in sports, Guinea loses its hosting right for the AFCON 2025. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has confirmed plans to remove a costly petrol subsidy as he presented his final budget last Friday as leader of the West African country, foreseeing deep revenue shortfalls. Despite being a major oil exporter, Nigeria imports a bulk of its petrol, and the subsidy keeps the price at a pump low for consumers. While popular with Nigerians, the subsidy is costly, with a price tag estimated at $9 billion this year. Good. Petrol subsidy has been a recurring and controversial public policy issue in our country since the early 80s. Unquote. Buhari told the joint session of the National Assembly in Abuja on Friday. Good. However, its current fiscal impact has clearly shown that the policy is unsustainable. Unquote. If the government goes forward with ending the subsidy, it would add to the burden of Nigeria's consumers who are battling with the inflationary fallout from Russia's war with Ukraine and the end of the COVID pandemic. Buhari presented a record budget of 20.51 trillion naira. This is equivalent to $47.4 billion for 2023, with spending up to 18.4% from this year's in nominal terms. But with inflation currently running at over 20%, the forecast at 17.16% for next year in the budget, that's unlikely to be matched, if any change in real terms. Uganda's ambition of joining the Oil Producers Club almost entirely rests on a pipeline being built between the oil fields in the Lake Albert region and the Tanzanian port of Tanga on the East African coast. Officially called the East African Crude Oil Pipeline, the facility, the world's longest heated pipeline, will move 230,000 barrels of oil per day. However, the project has been the target of climate activists who say it's an environmental disaster waiting to happen. Their campaign has seen nearly a dozen major landers and insurers pull out or decline to commit funds to the pipeline, estimated to cost around $5 billion. The reluctance by banks has set off discomfort and frustration in Kampala, with President Yoweri Museveni calling the West shallow and egocentric in a tirade against European Parliament resolution criticizing the pipeline on September 17. Despite the project's slow pace, Kampala insists it's on course to pump first oil by 2025. Last month, the Islamic Development Bank announced that it would commit $100 million to fund the pipeline's construction. France Total Energies is the pipeline's biggest shareholder with 62% stake. Uganda and Tanzania both hold 15% each. Chinese major oil CNOOC has an 8% stake. The people of Ouagadougou are reacting to the announcement that Captain Ibrahim Traore, leader of the 30th September coup d'etat, has taken power. Good. It is a good thing that he assumes power, says one man. Traore was designated head of state and supreme commander of the National Armed Forces on national television in a statement entitled Acte Fundamental. My problem is that as a young man, he needs advice, says one citizen by the name Mumuni Ouedraogo. Good. As he is a young person, he needs advice. Without advice, it can't work. We hope that all he has to do is to listen to the advice and he'll be fine, Ouedraogo stressed. Just a week ago, 34-year-old Ibrahim Traore was unknown even in his native Burkina Faso. But in the space of a weekend, he catapulted himself from army captain to the world's youngest leader. an ascent that has stoked hopes but also fears for a poor and chronically troubled country. Traoré, at the head of a corps of disgruntled junior officers, ousted Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Zaradogo Damiba, who seized power just in January. Former South African President Jacob Zuma has been set free following the expiry of his prison sentence for contempt of court, a government department said last Friday. Zuma received a 15-month sentence last year after he ignored instructions to participate in a corruption inquiry. He handed himself in, and on July 7 last year he began his sentence, triggering the worst violence South Africa had seen in years as his angry supporters took to the streets. In a statement, Zuma said he felt relieved to be a free man and thanked his supporters. Good. The messages of support on social media and other platforms kept me strong and focused on ensuring that those who wanted to break my spirit and resolve did not succeed. Zuma was released on medical parole in September 2021, but in December, the High Court set aside the parole decision and ordered him to return to jail. Zuma appealed the ruling and remained on parole pending the appeal outcome. Uganda's sugar exports have increased after a huge drop in July. According to the country's central bank, Uganda's sugar exports for the month of July suffered a 58% decline due to scarcity of the cane. However, the shipment of sugar is only a fraction of the volumes going out to South Sudan, Kenya, and Rwanda. According to the Bank of Uganda, the country's sugar export volumes dropped 16,000 tons in July, down from over 27,000 tons in June. Sugarcane tracks at factories, but factories find they are struggling to get hold of the supplies of sugarcane they usually had. Quote, the economy has opened and the consumption has gone high, but the supply of sugarcane is less because people did not plant in 2020, 2019, and 2021. It is a perennial crop which takes 16 to 18 months. It takes time. Unquote. Robert Olego, Senior Manager Outgrowers, Sugar Corporation Uganda Limited, said. Fluctuating prices, mounting expenses, and even debts have also forced sugarcane farmers to abandon their farms. Voters in the Southern African Kingdom of Lesotho cast their ballots in parliamentary elections last Friday. Lesotho has been governed for the past decade by a string of coalition governments that have proved fractious and frail, and no premier has served out a full 5-year term. Quote, it is very likely that there will be a coalition again, unquote, said Lesotho Vodron, a researcher at the South Africa's Institute of Security Studies in Pretoria. Surrounded entirely by South Africa, which heavily depends on it for water, Lesotho is a mountain kingdom of 2 million people, nicknamed the Kingdom in the Sky. The capital, Maseru, was quiet on Thursday evening, lured by taxi humming on the streets and vendors chatting under large umbrellas set on the side of the main road. About 1.5 million people are registered to vote when ballots opened at 7 a.m. in the morning and closed at 5 p.m. Only 47% of registered voters bothered to cast their votes at the last election in 2017. The president of the Confederation of African Football, Patrice Motsepe, traveled to Conakry on Friday to discuss with the interim president, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya, but said the decision dated back to July. Motsepe said they would ask the CAF for fresh bids because Guinea will not be ready to host the event in 2025. In March, Colonel Doumbouya appointed a new organizing committee, ousting the previous team, one of whose members publicly expressed doubts about the project's feasibility. He issued a decree declaring the organization of the 2025 AFCON of national interest and priority. It is not the first time a country has been stripped of its hosting rights. Among countries who have shown interest to picking up hosting the 2025 event are Algeria, Morocco, and Nigeria. Ethiopian runner Yelemzef Yehwalo became the youngest winner of the London Marathon last Sunday, recording the third fastest time in the women's competition's history. The 23-year-old beat last year's winner, Kenyan Joycelyn Jepkosgei, and fellow Ethiopian Alemu Megetu, second and third respectively. Good. I'm so happy to win the London Marathon. It's the first time I came. The London people are very loud, and that's inspired me. Thank you, London Marathon and London people. I am so happy to win the London Marathon, unquote, said London Marathon champion. The Ethiopian runner appeared to trip on the speed bump with 10 kilometers remaining, banging her head and hurting her hip and knee, but somehow recovered to rejoin the leading pack and crossing the line in 2 hours, 17 minutes and 25 milliseconds, the third fastest time at the event. That will be all for this week's KBJ Weekly Pan-African News Roundup. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel on the KT Business Journal TV and also follow us on all our social media handles. It's bye for now.